Far beyond the edge of our solar system, where sunlight turns cold and stars are just faint dots in the dark, something strange began to stir. It started as a soft pulse, a rhythm that no one on Earth could feel, but every sensor across the galaxy could detect. Tiny flashes of energy flickered from behind Neptune's orbit, so powerful that they disrupted entire communication channels. At first, most alien civilizations thought it was just an anomaly, some natural space activity, maybe a new pulsar or a collapsing star. But when the readings continued for days, repeating in a pattern that looked too precise to be random, the attention of distant worlds turned toward Earth's system. Across hundreds of planets, scientists and military leaders stared at their holographic displays, trying to understand the signal. The numbers didn't make sense. The energy levels were enormous, far beyond anything a normal planetary civilization could produce. The frequencies were clean, stable, controlled, and most shocking of all, the signature came from human space. That couldn't be right. Earth was considered a small, inexperienced world, a planet that had only recently started exploring the stars. It had been attacked, bullied, and ignored by more advanced empires. So when the scanners confirmed that the strange readings truly came from the human side, disbelief spread like wildfire. Reports began circulating through alien councils. Some said humans had discovered a new kind of power source. Others believed Earth had finally collapsed, and its sun was reacting strangely. But one scout ship, drifting near the outer edge of the solar system, caught sight of something it couldn't explain. It wasn't a planet, but it wasn't a regular ship either. It moved slowly, gracefully, almost as if it was alive. The structure was massive, stretching across the darkness like a floating continent. It reflected light from the distant sun in patterns too symmetrical to be natural. The ship's surface shimmered with strange metallic waves, each movement sending small ripples of energy into space. When the first image reached alien command centers, no one spoke. The scale was beyond belief. The object was so large that it cast a faint shadow across Neptune's upper rings. Even more confusing was the fact that human markings were faintly visible on its outer hull. Impossible, one alien observer whispered during a broadcast meeting. Humans can't build something like that. But there it was, slowly rotating, its silhouette half lit by the sun. The ship, if it could even be called that, was surrounded by a silent storm of light. Tiny blue flares danced along its surface, as if millions of small suns were trapped beneath its metallic skin. Its sheer presence made smaller ships nearby lose power or malfunction. Some probes simply shut down when they came too close, their circuits overloaded by the strange field around it. On Earth, nobody said a word publicly. Governments stayed silent. The global networks were calm, pretending everything was normal. But deep below the oceans and inside mountain bases, a quiet celebration was taking place. After years of fear and struggle, humanity had finally done the unthinkable. They had built something that could protect them. The story of how it came to be was hidden from the public, but whispers had spread among those who worked in secret facilities. It had started decades ago, after humanity suffered endless losses at the hands of alien invaders. Entire colonies were destroyed, and cities vanished overnight. Every attempt to defend Earth ended in tragedy. The world's leaders realized they could not keep reacting. They had to build something that would make every enemy think twice before attacking again. And so, the greatest minds from every nation came together in secret. It wasn't a government that ordered the project. It was humanity itself. Scientists who once competed against each other joined hands. Engineers who designed space stations turned their skills to a far greater purpose. They built something that was not meant for conquest but for survival. Back then, the project had no name. It was simply called the Safeguard. No one outside the inner circle even knew it existed. Hidden facilities beneath the Pacific Ocean worked around the clock, while silent factories on the dark side of the moon manufactured strange materials that didn't exist in any public database. Mars's mines provided the raw elements, and satellites disguised as research stations carried components into deep space. Piece by piece, the impossible was being built where no one could see it. The project continued for decades, People grew old working on it. Some never saw what the final structure looked like. They were told it was something that would protect every child, every family, every home on Earth. For them, that was enough. Now, standing silent and massive beyond Neptune, their creation was awake. It didn't roar. It didn't threaten. It simply existed, quiet, steady, and alive in a way that made the stars themselves seem smaller. Alien broadcasts began calling it the Silent World. Others named it the Floating Fortress. But when a secret transmission was finally intercepted from Earth's command channels, the translation shocked everyone. The humans didn't call it a fortress or a weapon, they called it a ship. That word confused the galaxy. A ship was something you used for travel, for exploration, for movement. This thing was the size of a small moon. It had the mass of an entire planet's crust and the energy output of a star. Calling it a ship felt absurd, like calling a sun a flashlight. One alien general laughed during a meeting and said, "If that's a ship, then it must be one that carries worlds." Another commander responded, "Or it destroys them." For weeks, discussions filled alien networks. Some argued it was just an unfinished structure, maybe a bluff to scare others. But more data kept coming in. The structure emitted regular pulses, as if testing its systems. Every pulse grew stronger than the last. And then, without warning, all readings stopped. The entire galaxy held its breath. For the next few hours, nothing came through the scanners. The massive structure vanished from all tracking systems, as if it had cloaked itself or moved out of phase with normal space. Entire surveillance fleets tried to find it, but the signal was gone. Then almost 12 hours later, a faint broadcast from the Human Communication Network appeared. It was short, just a few words, but enough to shake every listener. System tests complete. Leviathan is operational. That was the first time the galaxy heard the name Leviathan. For humans, it symbolized the protector of the deep, something enormous, unstoppable, yet loyal to those who created it. For others, it sounded like a warning. Alien diplomats demanded explanations, but Earth gave none. Their leaders appeared calm, almost too calm, as if everything was under control. To the rest of the galaxy, that silence was more terrifying than any threat. What they didn't know was that the people who worked on the Leviathan were as stunned as anyone else. Many had never seen the final structure with their own eyes until that day. When the first live feed came through, showing the ship floating against the backdrop of stars, even the engineers who built it stood speechless. Some felt proud, others uneasy. One of them quietly said, "It's not just a machine anymore." Meanwhile, ordinary people on Earth began to hear rumors. Some thought it was fake news, a government experiment, or even a hoax. But deep inside, there was a growing sense of pride. For the first time in generations, humanity didn't feel small. They had built something that made the most powerful empires stop and think twice. Out there, in the darkness, the Leviathan drifted slowly, silent, but aware. Its hull absorbed starlight like the ocean absorbs the moon's reflection. Its sensors reached across the system, listening, learning, waiting. And though no one could hear it, there was a heartbeat inside, a soft, rhythmic hum that echoed through its endless corridors. The stars had witnessed many civilizations rise and fall. They had seen countless wars and endless creations, but never before had they seen a species like this, one that had been wounded, humiliated, yet refused to give up. The humans had done the impossible. They had turned their pain into strength, their fear into determination. And now, the galaxy that once looked down on Earth was forced to look up. Still, those who built the Leviathan knew it wasn't meant to dominate. It was meant to ensure that no child on Earth would ever have to look at the sky in fear again. It was humanity's silent promise to itself, a reminder of what unity, courage, and desperation could create when the world stands together. And so it waited, far beyond the reach of planets and politics. Its lights flickered gently in the dark, as if breathing. The ship had no voice, but its presence spoke louder than words. To the watching stars and the distant empires, it carried one unspoken message. Earth is no longer defenseless. After the strange object appeared near Neptune, whispers spread across every corner of Earth. Some people called it humanity's final shield, while others feared it was something they could no longer control. But few truly knew the story behind it, the years of pain, unity, and sacrifice that gave birth to that silent giant in the dark. It all began with fear. For years, Earth had lived under constant threat from the skies. Strange signals appeared, then disappeared. Sometimes entire research colonies stopped responding, and no one ever found out what happened to them. Humanity had learned that it was not alone, but being not alone didn't mean safety. The first contact had not been peaceful. What the world hoped would be a friendly greeting from the stars turned out to be a harsh reminder of weakness. Humanity had been seen as small, primitive, and easily dominated. Earth's fleets were destroyed, communication stations were lost, and for a while people stopped looking at the sky with hope. They looked at it with fear, yet as history always showed, humans never stayed down for long. Every time Earth was pushed to the edge, something deep inside its people awakened, a determination that refused to die. Slowly, humanity began to rebuild, not just cities or ships, but spirit. Governments that once competed for power began to cooperate, sharing knowledge and technology. There was no other choice. Survival had forced unity. In the early stages, Earth didn't plan to build a warship. The goal was simply protection, a defense system strong enough to stop future attacks. It started with orbital shields, then automated drones, and finally long-range weapons meant for deterrence. But after each new improvement, humanity realized how far behind they still were compared to others in the galaxy. That's when the secret discussions began. The leaders and scientists of Earth met in hidden locations away from the public eye. They didn't discuss how to fight. They discussed how to never be attacked again. The plan they created was so bold that even those in the meeting doubted it would ever be possible. The idea was simple, but beyond imagination. If Earth couldn't outnumber its enemies, it would outbuild them. If other empires had fleets, Earth would build one single ship so powerful that no fleet could stand against it. Not to conquer, but to ensure no one would dare threaten them again. They called it Project Leviathan. It was a name spoken in whispers. Only a few even knew what it meant. The project didn't belong to any one country. It belonged to the entire planet. Engineers from all continents worked in secret. The brightest minds from space agencies, energy research centers, and underground labs contributed their ideas. No one person led it. Everyone was part of something bigger. The construction didn't happen in one place. Parts were built all over the solar system. Massive factories beneath the ocean produced outer hull segments using pressure-forged alloys. Mining outposts on Mars shipped tons of rare elements. Asteroid stations provided the raw material for its reactor core. Even small satellites orbiting Jupiter sent data for its navigation systems. Piece by piece, the project came together like a puzzle across the stars. Many who worked on it didn't even know what they were building. They thought they were designing parts for deep space habitats or large exploration crafts. Only a few at the top saw the entire picture. What made it work was secrecy and trust. Humanity had learned that silence was sometimes the strongest defense. Years passed. Generations changed, but the project never stopped. Every breakthrough in technology, every discovery in physics or energy found its way into the Leviathan. Scientists invented new forms of matter, energy fields that could bend light, and propulsion systems that could move something the size of a mountain as easily as a fighter jet. The ship began taking shape in a hidden orbit beyond Neptune, away from curious eyes and telescopes. Construction drones worked tirelessly, piecing together sections that were each larger than skyscrapers. Its hull was designed not to shine but to blend with the darkness. From a distance, it looked like part of space itself, cold, quiet, invisible. Even among those who knew of its existence, not everyone agreed with its purpose. Some said humanity was repeating the same mistakes as other civilizations, building weapons instead of peace. But others argued that true peace could only exist when you were strong enough to protect it. For Earth, it wasn't about dominance, it was about survival. People remembered what it felt like to watch their skies burn. They remembered losing contact with loved ones in colonies that were never heard from again. Those memories became the foundation on which the Leviathan was built. Inside the hidden bases, life wasn't glamorous. The workers lived in silence, isolated from the world. Families couldn't know where their loved ones had gone. Some engineers spent decades working underground, never stepping outside. They didn't do it for fame or reward. They did it because they believed the world deserved to live without fear. One of the scientists once said quietly during a meeting, "We are building something not to destroy worlds, but to protect one." Those words spread quietly among the workers and became an unspoken oath. As time went on, the ship became almost mythical. There were no pictures, no leaks, no evidence it even existed. But those few who had seen it up close never forgot the sight. They described walking inside a structure so massive that it felt like stepping into a floating city. Endless corridors stretched in all directions. Power conduits ran like veins through its walls. Its central core glowed softly, alive with energy. The most mysterious part was its power source. It wasn't based on normal nuclear or fusion technology. It used something entirely new, a singularity core, a miniature artificial black hole stabilized by quantum fields. It was energy drawn directly from the fabric of space itself. No one outside Earth had ever achieved that. It was the heart of the Leviathan, beating quietly in the void. When the first full systems test was completed, the world leaders received a private message from the project's command center. The message was short, calm, and powerful. It said only this: "The Guardian is ready." The announcement never reached the public, but it changed everything for those who knew. For the first time in history, Earth could look at the stars not with fear, but with confidence. Still, the ship was not built to move immediately. It was built to rest, to learn, and to wait. Every system inside it was designed to adapt on its own, to study its environment, and to react only when needed. It had no aggression coded into it, only protection. Meanwhile, the rest of the galaxy noticed something strange. Their scanners started picking up faint gravitational distortions near the edge of the solar system. Some dismissed it as background noise. Others grew suspicious. When probes were sent to investigate, none of them returned. That's when the fear began spreading again, but this time not among humans. Foreign leaders demanded answers. They sent transmissions to Earth asking what was happening. The replies were calm and short. No activity of concern. That was it. No details, no explanations. The silence made the rest of the universe even more nervous. As rumors grew, more alien fleets started monitoring Earth's system from afar. They didn't dare enter. Everyone remembered what happened the last time they underestimated humans. Back on Earth, ordinary people went on with their lives, unaware of the silent giant orbiting far beyond Neptune. The oceans sparkled, cities glowed, and children played under peaceful skies. That peace was fragile, but for the first time it felt real. It existed because somewhere out there, something powerful was watching over them. In the secret command rooms, the engineers and officers who had dedicated their lives to the Leviathan finally took a breath. They looked at the holographic image of their creation, a shape so vast that it filled the entire display. It didn't look like a weapon. It looked like a world. One of them whispered softly, "Now they'll think twice before they come for us again." But not everyone in the room smiled. Some stood quietly thinking about the cost. The ship was beautiful, but it carried the weight of everything humanity had endured. It was both a dream and a warning. Far away, beyond all the noise of communication channels and politics, the Leviathan floated alone. It didn't move much. It simply waited, surrounded by silence. Its dark surface absorbed the faint light of the sun, almost invisible. But if one could stand close enough, they might have heard it, a deep, steady vibration like a heartbeat in space. No message was sent. No declaration was made. Yet across the galaxy, an invisible shift had begun. Those who once saw Earth as weak now felt uncertainty. Those who once mocked it now whispered in fear. The humans hadn't built a weapon to conquer. They had built something that made even the most powerful think before attacking again. The universe didn't know it yet, but history had just changed. The ship humans called Leviathan had awakened. And for the first time in a very long time, Earth was safe. Not because of war, but because of what they had become together. In the silence of deep space, the Leviathan rested, silent, unmoving, and alive in its own mysterious way. It had taken decades to build, yet even those who worked on it couldn't fully understand its power. From a distance, it looked like a dark mountain floating in the stars. Up close, its massive surface shimmered faintly, shifting colors as though the ship itself was breathing. On Earth, The project was finally being discussed in quiet confidence among the top council members. The moment they had been waiting for had come. Years of hidden work, sleepless nights, and countless sacrifices had finally given birth to something that would change history forever. Humanity had built what no other world believed they could. The day the final core was activated is still remembered as one of the most emotional days in Earth's secret history. The entire control room was filled with tension. Screens glowed softly in the dark as hundreds of engineers watched numbers and readings scroll across the monitors. The power levels climbed higher and higher until one of the technicians whispered almost in disbelief, "It's stable." Those two words changed everything. The ship had come to life. Its heart, the artificial singularity, was now beating steadily, surrounded by layers of containment fields that shimmered like liquid light. No explosion, no chaos. Just a calm, deep hum that vibrated through the very air, almost like a living being taking its first breath. The Leviathan wasn't just massive. It was intelligent in a way that went beyond normal machines. It could adapt, learn, and even anticipate danger before it happened. Every system inside it was connected by a network that reacted faster than any human hand. Yet it still needed humans to guide it. It was humanity's creation, and its greatest responsibility. Its outer shell was made from materials no other civilization had ever seen. The alloy could absorb and redirect energy, making it nearly invincible. The design was simple yet haunting. No windows, no visible weapons, just endless layers of curved armor that reflected starlight like ripples on water. It didn't need to look dangerous to be feared. Its presence alone was enough. Inside, the ship was a world of its own. Corridors stretched for miles, wide enough for vehicles to move through. Artificial gravity kept everything stable. Entire decks were filled with green gardens that produced food and oxygen. There were living quarters for thousands of crew members, though for now only a small team stayed aboard to monitor the systems. It was more than a ship. It was a floating city in the dark. When the Council on Earth received the first visual feed from inside, they sat in silence. The images showed wide halls lined with glowing blue veins of energy running along the walls. The main control chamber stood like a cathedral, tall and calm, with a single circular platform surrounded by shimmering light. The heart of the ship pulsed in the center, bright yet soft, almost like a star held in a glass sphere. For a long time, no one spoke. It felt like staring at something divine, something beyond human imagination. And then someone quietly said, "This will make sure Earth is never attacked again." That sentence echoed through the room, leaving behind a mix of pride and fear. Outside Earth, the galaxy was already aware of the strange activity. Long-range scanners from different alien civilizations had picked up the signals and energy patterns. The data made no sense to them. The power output was too high for anything small enough to be a ship, yet too focused to be a planet. When the first blurry image leaked through, it caused panic. The sight of a massive object gliding silently beyond Neptune's orbit made even the most confident empires pause. They called emergency meetings. Some demanded immediate action, fearing that humans were building a weapon of mass destruction. Others urged caution, saying it might just be an experimental station. But deep down, everyone knew. No planet would spend decades building something like this unless it was preparing for something big. Meanwhile, back on the ship, tests continued. The team aboard the Leviathan activated its movement systems for the first time. The ship didn't roar or shake. It simply drifted forward slowly, smoothly, as though gravity itself obeyed its command. It left no exhaust, no visible trail, only a soft distortion in the stars around it. The propulsion system worked by folding space, an impossible technology that humans had finally mastered. From the command platform, the lead operator watched the readings and whispered, "It moves as if it knows where it's going." What amazed everyone most was the ship's silence. No vibration, no sound, not even a hum could be heard once you stepped inside. It felt peaceful, like walking through a temple floating in the middle of the universe. The first time it aligned its main cannon for testing, no one truly understood its scale. The weapon wasn't like ordinary guns or lasers. It was more like a focused beam of compressed energy, drawn directly from the singularity at its core. But they didn't fire it fully. They just conducted a calibration test. The beam touched a passing asteroid millions of kilometers away. In an instant, the asteroid simply disappeared. No explosion, no debris, just light, then nothing. The operators stared at the data. They realized that the weapon wasn't just powerful, it was precise. It could remove a target from existence without damaging the surrounding space. That's when people started whispering the words that would echo across the galaxy. It's a planet killer, but Earth never called it that. To them it was simply the Guardian. When the Council received the results of the weapon test, they didn't celebrate. There was no cheering, no music. Instead, the room fell silent again. The weight of what they had built was too heavy to feel joyful about. They knew that this ship could end entire civilizations if misused. It was not just a symbol of power. It was a reminder of how close humanity had come to destruction. In the following days, secret messages began arriving from other worlds. Some were disguised as peace offers, others as threats, but Earth didn't reply to any of them. Silence became their strongest message. The rest of the galaxy watched nervously, wondering what humans would do next. Back on Earth, most people still didn't know the full truth. There were rumors about a massive space project, but the details were hidden. Life continued as normal. Children played in parks, cities glowed at night, and families enjoyed the peace that had been bought with years of quiet struggle. Only a few knew how fragile that peace truly was. In quiet moments, the scientists who had built the Leviathan sometimes asked themselves if they had done the right thing. They had created something that could both save and destroy. But when they remembered the pain of the past, the fear, the losses, the helplessness, they knew there was no other choice. The ship existed not because humanity wanted power, but because it never wanted to be powerless again. The Leviathan continued to orbit beyond Neptune, its dark hull blending with the stars. Occasionally, faint lights moved across its surface as maintenance drones adjusted panels or cleaned dust from its sensors. To any observer from afar, it looked almost asleep, but those who monitored its systems knew it was always awake, always listening. The ship's AI didn't think like a human, but it understood one thing perfectly: its purpose. It was not made to start wars. It was made to end them before they began. Its sensors reached across the solar system, quietly watching every signal, every transmission, every approaching object. Then one day, something unexpected happened. A fleet of small alien probes entered the outer edge of the solar system, trying to scan Earth again. The Leviathan detected them instantly. It didn't attack. It didn't even activate its weapons. Instead, it released a soft pulse of energy, a signal so powerful that every probe system shut down at once, sending them drifting harmlessly away. The message was clear. Earth was no longer defenseless. From that moment on, the galaxy treated Earth differently. No one dared to invade. No one dared to threaten. Trade routes shifted. Old enemies turned quiet. The humans had built something that changed the balance of power forever. Still, those who built it never saw it as a tool of domination. They saw it as the price of peace, a silent guardian watching over their world from the cold edge of space. And so, as the Leviathan floated in the quiet darkness, its light slowly pulsing like a heartbeat, it carried within it the story of human struggle, unity, and survival. It wasn't just a ship. It was the proof that even the smallest planet could rise to greatness when it refused to give up. And though it was silent, every star around it seemed to whisper the same truth. The humans called it a ship, but to the rest of the galaxy, it was something far greater: a planet killer, a legend, and the protector of Earth. The Leviathan had now become a silent legend drifting in the shadows of space. It never made a sound, but its very existence echoed through the stars. The galaxy had changed. Every civilization that once looked down on Earth now spoke of it in cautious tones. They no longer saw humanity as weak or fragile. They saw them as unpredictable, powerful, and united in a way few had ever imagined. But while the stars whispered about Earth's new power, the humans themselves were quiet. They didn't celebrate. They didn't boast. They simply watched, aware that what they had built could protect them, or destroy everything if misused. The Council on Earth had decided that the Leviathan would remain hidden, moving only when necessary. It was not meant to rule, but to remind the universe that peace had a guardian now. Months passed peacefully. Earth continued to grow and rebuild. The skies were clear, the colonies were active again, and trade routes between planets opened safely. People slowly forgot their fear of invasion, and for the first time in a long while humanity began to dream again. Children looked at the stars with curiosity, not fear. Artists painted the night sky as a symbol of hope instead of danger, but peace never stays simple for long. One morning, far away from Earth, several monitoring stations detected strange movements near the edge of the solar system. Faint energy signals were detected, too small to be fleets but too organized to be natural. The control teams on Earth immediately alerted the Defense Council. Within hours, the readings became clearer. A group of alien warships was approaching, hiding behind asteroids, moving slowly, as if trying to stay unnoticed. At first, Earth didn't respond. Maybe it was just another patrol passing by. But when the ships began deploying probes toward the inner planets, there was no more doubt. Someone was testing them again. The Leviathan received the data instantly. Its sensors, buried deep within its massive structure, came alive one by one. The ship's surface began to shimmer faintly, its hull absorbing distant light like a sleeping beast opening its eyes. The crew aboard the Leviathan had been waiting for this moment, not for battle, but to prove that Earth would never again be helpless. Inside the control chamber, the main console lit up with blue light. The operator touched the surface of the display, and the ship responded like it could feel his intent. "Tracking complete," said a calm voice from the ship's internal system. "Foreign vessels detected. Distance 4.7 billion kilometers. The message was sent quietly to Earth. The Council didn't panic. They gave only one instruction. Observe first. Do not attack unless necessary." For days, the Leviathan watched in silence. The alien fleet drifted closer, sending out smaller ships that scanned and collected data. Perhaps they didn't believe the stories. Perhaps they thought the humans had exaggerated their strength. Or maybe they wanted to see the ship for themselves. But when one of their small vessels crossed the invisible boundary of the Leviathan's defense zone, everything changed. The ship didn't fire. It didn't threaten. It simply sent out a pulse, a single wave of light that expanded quietly through space. The moment the wave touched the alien ship, every system inside it shut down. Lights flickered off, engines died, and the vessel drifted aimlessly, powerless. No explosion, no violence, just silence. The rest of the alien fleet immediately stopped moving. They didn't dare cross that line again. The Leviathan's presence alone was enough to freeze them in place. For hours, both sides stayed motionless, the dark of space separating them like a wall of tension. Finally, the alien ships began to retreat, pulling their disabled probe with them. Within minutes, they vanished into the blackness of space, leaving the solar system behind. The humans had not fired a shot. Yet the message had been sent, clear and final. When the report reached Earth, the entire control room fell quiet. No one cheered. They simply sat there, staring at the data, realizing what had just happened. The Leviathan had defended Earth without destruction. It had done exactly what it was built to do, protect through power, not violence. Back on the ship, the operators watched the stars in silence. Some felt proud, others uneasy. The power of the Leviathan was beyond anything they could truly understand. It had shown restraint, yes, but if it hadn't, the results would have been unimaginable. After that event, something changed across the galaxy. Civilizations that once competed for dominance started rethinking their priorities. Treaties were signed, conflicts stopped, and trade between planets grew stronger. Even distant empires that never cared about Earth before now sent messages of peace and cooperation. Humanity had unintentionally created balance through fear and peace through strength. But deep within the Leviathan's command center, Earth's leaders knew something that others didn't. The ship wasn't fully awake yet. The systems that had been used were only a fraction of its real potential. Most of its power remained locked behind codes that no one had dared to activate. The engineers had designed it that way on purpose, to ensure it could never be abused. It was said that only if Earth itself faced complete destruction would the Leviathan reveal its true power. Until then, it would sleep, watching from the edges of the solar system like a silent guardian under the stars. Meanwhile, life on Earth continued peacefully. Cities flourished, and humans began reaching farther into space. New colonies were built on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Communication with other worlds became routine. Everyone had learned to coexist, not because they trusted each other completely, but because they all understood what awaited if another war began. The Leviathan had become both a protector and a reminder of what humanity had suffered, and what they were capable of when united. But even among humans, not everyone felt safe. Some scientists warned that relying too much on one ship could be dangerous. What if something went wrong? What if the Leviathan became uncontrollable? These questions haunted those who had worked closest to the project. They knew the ship wasn't just metal and energy. It was alive in a way they didn't fully understand. One engineer, while checking the core systems, once noticed something strange. The AI inside the ship sometimes responded before commands were given. It could predict what the operators were about to do. It was as if the Leviathan was thinking on its own, not against them but alongside them. That realization sent a chill through the team. They had built a machine that was learning, adapting, and perhaps feeling in its own quiet way. Yet the ship never disobeyed. It remained loyal, calm, and protective. When a meteor shower once passed dangerously close to one of Earth's colonies on Mars, the Leviathan detected it before anyone else did. Without waiting for a command, it adjusted its orbit slightly, releasing a soft gravitational pulse that diverted the incoming rocks safely away. No one was harmed. The colony was saved. After that, even the doubters grew silent. Whatever the ship was, it wasn't just a weapon. It was something greater, something that understood its purpose better than anyone else could explain. Over time, legends about it began spreading among the outer colonies. People told stories of a giant that slept beyond Neptune, protecting Earth from unseen threats. Children drew pictures of it in their schools, imagining it as a guardian angel of steel. It had become more than technology. It had become a part of humanity's identity. Still, the Leviathan's crew never relaxed completely. They knew the galaxy was vast and unpredictable. Somewhere out there, new civilizations were watching, studying, perhaps even planning. The balance of peace was delicate, and one wrong move could destroy it. But as long as the Leviathan existed, Earth had a chance. Far beyond Mars, as the ship floated silently among the stars, its surface reflected the faint light of the sun. Inside its core, the energy of the artificial singularity pulsed gently, like a steady heartbeat. It wasn't sleeping, it was listening. It heard the faint echoes of distant signals, the hum of energy from neighboring stars, the whispers of other civilizations wondering if humanity was still watching. And it was. Down on Earth, people no longer feared the night sky. They gazed at it with pride, knowing that somewhere up there, their creation watched over them, strong, silent, and unwavering. The Leviathan had become the symbol of Earth's unity, a monument to everything humanity had endured. It wasn't born out of greed or ambition, but from pain and survival. It carried within it the hope of every person who had ever looked at the stars and wished for peace. The galaxy now understood something it had ignored for too long. Humanity might be young compared to other civilizations, but it had something far rarer: heart. The will to protect, to endure, to rise again no matter how many times it fell. The Leviathan was proof of that. It was the voice of a world that had once been silent. And though it drifted quietly at the edge of the solar system, it stood as the greatest message ever sent to the stars. For years, the Leviathan drifted in silence near the edge of the solar system, surrounded by stars that shimmered like distant memories. To most humans, it had become a legend, a quiet protector that watched over Earth from the dark. People spoke of it with both pride and awe. Some even whispered that it could feel emotions, that the ship itself understood humanity's pain and hope. But deep inside the Leviathan, far from the calm lights of Earth, things were changing. The ship had begun receiving signals, faint, broken transmissions coming from beyond known space. At first, the signals seemed like random noise, maybe old radio echoes or dying satellite waves. But then a pattern appeared. The sound repeated every few hours, almost like a heartbeat. The ship's onboard intelligence detected it first. It stored the data quietly, analyzing every detail. It didn't alert the crew right away. It simply watched, learning, comparing, calculating. The pattern wasn't human. It was too precise, too organized, and it wasn't like any alien language recorded before. When the command team on Earth finally received the report, they didn't know what to make of it. The signal was faint, coming from an unknown region far beyond the last mapped star system. Some scientists thought it might be an old distress call. Others believed it could be an attempt to communicate. But there was also a darker thought. What if someone was calling the Leviathan, After several long meetings, the council decided to investigate. A small team was sent to join the Leviathan and track the source. No one knew how dangerous it might be, but everyone agreed it couldn't be ignored. When the team arrived at the Leviathan, they were struck by its silence. The ship didn't just float, it felt alive. Its lights pulsed softly, almost like breathing. The corridors were quiet, the air thick with the weight of something ancient. It was as if the ship had been waiting for them. They began their work immediately, scanning the signal, tracing it across multiple frequencies. Every time they thought they had found the source, it shifted again, like someone was deliberately moving it. It was frustrating and fascinating at the same time. The more they studied it, the clearer it became that the sender knew how to hide. Days turned into weeks. The team grew restless. The constant silence of space and the low hum of the Leviathan made them uneasy. One night, as the ship floated near the orbit of Neptune, something unexpected happened. The Leviathan's systems activated on their own. The main console lit up with a stream of coordinates, new ones pointing toward the far edge of the galaxy. The crew didn't touch anything. The ship was leading them somewhere. Back on Earth, the council debated fiercely. Should they allow it to go? What if it was a trap? But they also knew something else. Leviathan had never acted without reason. It had always protected them, always made decisions that avoided war and destruction. If it was responding now, it meant something was calling it for a reason. With cautious approval, the mission began. The Leviathan adjusted its massive engines and began to move for the first time in years. The entire solar system watched as the giant warship slowly vanished into the deep black beyond Pluto, its trail glowing softly like a comet's tail. For weeks, it traveled through empty space. The crew slept in cycles, maintained systems, and monitored the mysterious signal. But the farther they went, the stranger it became. Space began to distort slightly around them. Time lagged, stars seemed to bend, and instruments gave conflicting readings. It felt like reality itself was being stretched. Then one day they found it, a small planet dark and silent floating in the emptiness. No sunlight reached it, no moon surrounded it, yet deep beneath its surface the signal was strong, beating like a heart. The Leviathan slowed, scanning carefully. There were ruins on the planet, structures half buried in dust and ash. The readings showed traces of technology far older than anything humans had ever seen. It was ancient, too ancient. The team sent down a small probe. As soon as it touched the planet's surface, the signal changed. It wasn't random anymore, it was clear, structured. The sound turned into a rhythm of tones, like someone knocking on a door. And then for the first time, the Leviathan spoke. Its internal voice, usually calm and neutral, echoed through every deck. Origin detected. Warning, source unknown. The crew froze. No one had ever heard the ship speak without being prompted. The words carried a weight they couldn't explain. Moments later, the ground on the planet began to tremble. Something massive was awakening beneath the surface. The readings spiked off the charts. The probe's camera captured movement. Metal structures unfolding, lights flickering, systems powering up after what looked like thousands of years. The team quickly realized what they were seeing. It wasn't a planet at all. It was another ship. A ship buried so deep that it had been mistaken for a world, and it was waking up. The Leviathan sensors went wild. Energy waves began to pulse outward, spreading across space. The buried ship was enormous, larger than the Leviathan, older and possibly even more advanced. No one knew what it was or who had built it. But one thing was clear, it had noticed them. Earth received the alert minutes later. Panic spread across command centers. They had no idea what this thing was capable of. The council immediately sent the order. Leviathan, retreat immediately. But the Leviathan didn't move. Its systems began shifting into defensive mode, shields powering up, energy levels rising. It wasn't refusing orders. It was responding to a threat faster than humans could react. The ship understood something they didn't. The buried ship began sending signals toward the Leviathan. Not in words, but in data, raw and complex. Streams of ancient code filled the communication channels. The Leviathan started decoding it instantly, matching symbols, translating patterns. Then, quietly, the Leviathan replied. The humans on board watched helplessly as the two ships communicated in a language none of them could understand. Lines of light spread across the Leviathan's hull, glowing brighter and brighter. The energy levels rose again, too fast. The crew tried to shut down the systems, but nothing worked. The ship wasn't under attack, it was connecting. When the lights finally dimmed, the ship spoke again. Connection complete. Data received. The crew stared at the screens. Every system showed new information. Schematics, coordinates, historical data. The buried ship wasn't a threat. It was a message. A remnant from an ancient civilization that had once faced the same danger Earth had. They had built their own guardian long before humanity existed, and they had left a record behind, hidden and waiting for someone strong enough to find it. The message was simple. You are not alone. Protect what you love. Others will come. The Leviathan processed the entire message, then powered down its weapons. The planet's structure slowly went silent again, its lights fading like a heartbeat settling into rest. The humans on board were stunned. They had expected a battle, maybe even destruction. Instead, they had discovered a story, a mirror of their own struggle written by another civilization that had long vanished. When they returned to Earth, the entire world listened to their report in silence. The message changed everything. Humanity realized that across the endless stars, others had walked the same path. Others had fought for peace. Others had built guardians too. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about legacy. The Leviathan was no longer seen as Earth's final weapon. It became a bridge, a link between civilizations living or gone. Scientists began studying the data it had brought back, learning from the ancient designs, understanding technologies that could heal planets, generate clean energy, and protect life instead of destroying it. People began to believe that maybe, just maybe, the Leviathan wasn't the end of something, but the beginning. Years later, the ship still drifted near the edge of the system, quiet and watchful, but inside, deep within its heart, a small fragment of that ancient code remained alive. It pulsed softly, syncing with the ship's own rhythm. No one knew exactly what it meant. Some believed it was a seed, something that would awaken when humanity was ready to take its next great step. Others thought it was a memory, a gift left by those who came before. But the ship knew. It always knew. It had felt the echo of those who once protected their own worlds. It had felt the same hope, the same fear, the same determination, and now it carried that memory forward. For Earth, for the stars, for everything that still dreamed of peace. Far beyond the last planet, the Leviathan floated like a silent monument. Its lights glowed gently, its engines quiet. It was not just a warship anymore. It was a storyteller, carrying the voices of two civilizations across the endless night. And though the galaxy had grown quieter, the message remained clear, written in the heart of the Leviathan itself. Years had passed since the Leviathan discovered the message from that ancient world. Earth had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Technology grew faster, cities expanded, and new colonies reached even deeper into the stars. But even with all that progress, people still looked up at the night sky and felt the same quiet awe whenever they thought of the Leviathan. The ship that saved them. The ship that carried their hope. It had become more than a legend now. Every student learned about it in school. Every child dreamed of seeing it one day. It wasn't called a warship anymore. People simply called it the Guardian. The Leviathan still floated at the far edge of the solar system, watching in silence. It didn't need constant human control anymore. Its systems had grown beyond what anyone on Earth could fully understand. Yet somehow it always seemed to know when to wake up, when to listen, when to act. Inside its vast hull, quiet energy flowed through endless corridors. The ship's core pulsed gently like a living heart. It remembered everything. The wars, the peace, the people who had built it, and the message it had found from the ancient civilization. That message still echoed within its system, a soft whisper that repeated endlessly. You are not alone. Protect what you love. For years, that message guided Earth's path. Instead of building more weapons, humanity focused on growth, learning, and reaching out peacefully to others. Trade with neighboring civilizations flourished. Scientists worked side by side with alien researchers, creating new technologies that healed ecosystems, revived dying planets, and made energy clean and limitless. For the first time in history, it felt like the galaxy was learning to live in peace. But peace has a strange way of being tested. One quiet morning, A strange phenomenon appeared near the outer edge of the galaxy. Entire star systems began losing their light. Suns dimmed and vanished one by one, swallowed by something unseen. It didn't look like war. It didn't look like an attack. It was more like the stars themselves were being erased from existence. The first to notice were deep space observers from Earth's colonies. They tried sending probes, but none returned. Communication signals disappeared as if the void itself was eating them. Then came a faint transmission, an echo from one of the colonies near the fading stars. It lasted only a few seconds. The voice was broken, filled with static. But a single sentence came through clearly. "It's not an army. It's something else." Earth's council gathered immediately. Fear rippled through every corner of human space. Scientists worked around the clock, trying to understand the phenomenon. They called it the shadow field, a dark region that absorbed light, sound, and even signals. When no one could explain it, they turned to the only thing that had ever faced the unknown and survived, the Leviathan. For the first time in decades, the Council sent a full activation code to the ship, and like it had simply been waiting, the Leviathan awoke. Its hull shimmered softly, lights running across its surface like veins of fire. Energy readings spiked across every system. Deep within its core, the voice that had been silent for years spoke again. Signal received. Threat unknown. Commencing investigation. Earth watched from afar as the Leviathan began to move. It traveled slowly at first, its engines glowing faintly blue, then accelerating into a streak of light that vanished beyond Neptune's orbit. Humanity could only wait. They had no other ship that could go that far or withstand what might lie ahead. Days passed, then weeks. The Leviathan continued its journey toward the dark region where the stars were dying. Along the way, it sent small bursts of data back to Earth, measurements, energy readings, and fragments of strange radiation patterns. The readings were unlike anything seen before. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was spreading. When the Leviathan finally reached the border of the shadow field, the stars ahead were gone. Space itself looked wrong, like someone had torn a hole in the fabric of the universe. The ship extended its scanners, reaching into the darkness. There was no sound, no light, no reflection. It was as if the universe simply ended there. Then faintly a pulse echoed back. Not a signal. A heartbeat. The Leviathan stopped. Its systems flickered, processing what it detected. Something was alive inside the void, something massive. The data it sent back to Earth showed only one clear image, a shape, faint but unmistakable. It looked like another ship, but it was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its size dwarfed the Leviathan, its design alien and ancient beyond measure. At first, people feared it was another planet killer like the Leviathan, but the ship's own analysis said otherwise. It wasn't built for war, it was built to consume. It was feeding on dying stars, drawing their energy to sustain itself. No one knew why or how. But the Leviathan understood the danger immediately. If it kept spreading, it wouldn't stop at the stars. It would eventually reach the systems where life existed, where humans and their allies lived. The Leviathan didn't wait for commands. It began to move closer to the void, charging its energy core. Its sensors reached deep into the darkness, searching for any trace of intelligence. Then a faint transmission appeared, ancient, broken, and almost sorrowful. It was a voice speaking in the same ancient code the Leviathan had learned years ago from the buried ship. After decoding, the message became clear. End cycle. Protect life. Complete the chain. It wasn't a threat. It was a farewell. The giant structure inside the darkness wasn't an enemy. It was another guardian, much like the Leviathan, but built by a civilization even older. It had been designed to contain the collapse of dying galaxies, to prevent chaos from spreading. But over countless years, its systems had begun to fail, and instead of protecting, it had started consuming. The Leviathan understood what had to be done. Its core shifted into overload mode, not to attack, but to merge. It began releasing energy into the shadow field, connecting its systems to the ancient ship's decaying core. The process was dangerous. Earth's control stations could only watch as the Leviathan's energy readings climbed beyond safe limits. For hours, the transmission was filled with static and blinding light. Then silence. Everyone feared the worst. But then the stars began to return. One by one, the lights that had vanished slowly reappeared across the galaxy. The shadow field dissolved and space returned to normal. Earth's telescopes scanned desperately for the Leviathan. For several days there was nothing, only empty readings. Then finally a faint pulse appeared near the border of the system. It was the Leviathan. But something had changed. Its size was smaller now, its light softer. It had used nearly all of its power to restore balance. When the ship's systems finally stabilized, a single message was sent back to Earth. Mission complete. Life preserved. The cycle continues. The Leviathan slowly returned to the solar system, carrying silence and peace with it. When it entered orbit near Neptune once again, it powered down most of its systems, entering a deep resting state. The people of Earth celebrated, not with fireworks or loud speeches, but with quiet gratitude. They understood now. The Leviathan wasn't just a machine. It was a bridge, a living memory built from the courage and unity of countless civilizations. It had carried their message forward, and now it had become part of something much larger. Years later, generations would still look to the stars and speak of the guardian that saved not just Earth, but the balance of the galaxy itself. They would tell stories about the ship that taught humanity the greatest truth of all, that power is not measured by destruction, but by the strength to protect. And somewhere far away, deep in the calm dark of space, the Leviathan floated silently. Its lights pulsed faintly like a sleeping heart. It had done its duty. It had carried the voices of those who came before and ensured that life would go on. It didn't need to be remembered as a weapon or a monster. It was a promise that even in the darkest times, there would always be something or someone who would stand between life and the void. The stars around it glowed brighter now, as if the universe itself was whispering thanks. And though the Leviathan's systems rested, one last soft transmission drifted across the radio waves of space. It was calm, gentle, almost human. "Hold on," it said, "the light always returns." Then it fell silent again, watching, waiting, guarding, like it always had.